underdog stories are the best, but only when the unexpected happens and the underdog wins. Nobody talks about the underdog stories where the underdogs just remain underdogs and they just get their asses beat over and over, right? The underdog movies that happen are all about like, oh man, we're getting our asses beat all the time.
That would be a depressing movie.
Surprise everyone and they win. We have never made a movie that was like, oh man, it's so hard for the Bad News Bears. They're losing all their games. And they continue to lose every game and get there.
They all lost their jobs.
Hello and welcome back to The Dive, driven by Kia Season 9, episode number 10. This episode will be titled, Meteos is the King of Fantasy. Because he is. Congratulations. He absolutely smurfed last week.
Let's go.
I think he's starting to sweat, and we have a super week coming up. Any moves with your Cloud9 plus Lions roster, even though
the Warren Buffett of LTA fantasy.
Well, the funniest thing is when he's talking about his team, he's like, oh man, I didn't have any money left, so I had to get Lions. And then Lions paid you like
Lions was insane. So everyone starts with 50 net worth. I'm at 67 now. So my C9 plus Lions roster has gone up so much. I almost have enough to get Vulcan, actually. So what I'm thinking is Lions, I bought him.
He's just trying to trade up the ladder.
Yeah, it really is, shamelessly. So Lions, I think I bought him for like 4.5, and now he's 12.7. So that's like the biggest gain. But here's the thing.
High.
Yeah, exactly. They're about to play the other top 3 teams, and they lost their first match. So even though Lions has done me good so far, I feel like I should sell him, pick up somebody else. I haven't looked through it yet, but somebody else who's going to have some
play DSG and Dignitas.
Yeah. Okay. So looking at it, Huhi and Seos and Isles are all like dirt cheap. So if I think any of them can have a good week, I sell Lions, pick up one of them. If their points go up at all, I can get Vulcan.
There you go.
So yeah,
and then you're in the end game, and you just have all
then I just have the event.
I feel like you should pick. I feel like the smart pickup then is probably Seos.
I need to sit down and look through it.
Games.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. So yeah, I mean could be a Seos.
There you go. By next week, you should have
Shopify are well, nah. I mean Shopify are playing Team Liquid and 100 Thieves the second 2 games. The first game was versus DSG.
There you go.
I can't sell midweek, right? Like I can't.
No, you can't sell in between.
I tried to actually update my roster this week, but I tried to do it the morning of. But LTA South already started, so then I was like, oh, it's already locked. I can't do it.
Yeah, that's the only thing.
I need them to just go up a little bit. I'm so close to getting Vulcan. I just need them to gain like $1, and I'm in.
Yeah. I also saw a lot of the comments on the episode from last week talking about the Team Liquid and FlyQuest sub discussion. And so I wanted to reach out and get even more like updated info from Spawn. So I talked to Spawn and Bwipo directly to get Bwipo's view, because we were like, well, he has talked about, liking coaching, what are the real reasons? And Bwipo sent me like 7 paragraphs. But I really liked this line that he sent, where he said, part of the reason that he advocates for 6-man rosters is when you're not present in the game, you can remove your emotional attachment to your decisions and the results and see exactly how your team functions, which I think that's a very succinct like kind of headline for it. And he also talked a lot further about, his time on Fnatic and talking about playing with Reckless and Hilly and, him like going bottom lane more and really needing to be like removed from the game to be able to see that, but then it benefited them a lot. And so he's always kind of wanted to get back to that. But I found it interesting. He didn't say one single word about Fearless Draft or champion pools or anything like that. I also asked Bwipo why Gatkos specifically, and he said he actually would have preferred a North American talent because he's going to have to do a lot to, be deserving of an import slot. Which I thought was pretty interesting because Bwipo does like training people up and teaching people. So it's pretty interesting. He also said, he does like coaching, but while he is one of the best players in the league, he is going to play, and he's like, and so I'm definitely going to play now. So it's not any like moving quicker towards that or anything like that. So I thought that was pretty interesting, because a lot of the FlyQuest posts did talk about like fearless drafts and champion pool and stuff like that, but didn't seem like that was like too close onto his radar.
Yeah, 100%. Because I think it is worth looking at the reason that the teams give for any moves like that. But I will say, having been on both sides of it, you're pretty much always going to give a PR answer, and it might not always be the full truth of something. If a player is super underperforming, but you want to try to do right by the player or whatnot, like say a player loses motivation, which I'm not saying this is the case here, but just in general, right? If a player like is really unmotivated, they're like playing ARMs with their girlfriend all day, whatever it is, you might not say that in your post, be like, yep, we're picking up a replacement because this guy's not playing the game. It would be more diplomatic, be like, we're like
Exploring
trying out
options.
Yeah, we're exploring a 6-man roster, whatever. And so I'm not saying that's the case here at all, but I think it is important sometimes to like read between the lines. Sometimes what the teams say isn't always the exact reason for things, and the action of what they're doing is the thing that I think is worth looking at. If they're picking up players, if they're trying out players, there's a reason for that, right? And what they say publicly may or may not be the exact reason for it.
I also talked to Spawn directly, and Spawn is always super open with us. And I straight up asked him, like, what roles are being subbed right now? Are the subs under the impression that they can make their main roster? And he was very open. He was like, yeah, and you can, talk about all that stuff too. He was like, we were subbing mid and jungle. Now we're just doing jungle. And as far as making main roster, it's different from sub to sub. It's specific with the player. But it has helped them identify a lot of stuff, because he said their team is full of creative players, and so they wanted to use more standard players to identify if their creative things were actually good or if they were like just being creative and not.
That's really funny to hear, because when I think of a creative team in the LTA, I don't think of Liquid. I think of them as the most standard team. They're we're going to play front to back, all tank comps with 2 carries or whatnot. So it is funny because that their perspective is that they're creative, because they could be, but from the outside, I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah.
It's also how Liquid's always won, right? Like even back, in the doublest era, right? They always were like team fighting, scaling, 5v5, front to back, that sort of style. It is definitely interesting though, because like you said, in the article, that Sheep Esports had on the pickup with Geckos, Papa Smithy does talk about, Fearless, and like how, when they made their decisions for roster for the year, Fearless was supposed to only be split 1, then it going full year changes the conversation. And, like the pickup of Geckos could give them kind of this advantage potentially, right? That's kind of the implication and what the article says. But to me, like that, I had already read the article last week when we talked about it, but I just didn't mention that because I honestly just kind of looked at it as like, okay, well, it's just like saying something to say something. Because to me, talking about getting an advantage in Fearless by having a new young player when you have Bwipo on your team is like kind of crazy. And I don't think that like it's impossible for a 6-man roster to work, but I don't think that it gets you some like magical advantage in draft, because when you're swapping out Bwipo, you're losing all of his champion pool and that threat too, right? Yes, Fearless does change things a little bit because, in theory, it's like, okay, well, Bwipo has already played his 3 best champions in the first 3 games. So, like, now those are off the table anyway. But it's like Bwipo plays so many different weird things. And, like, when I talk to top laners in the league, they talk about him as being the guy that they're most scared drafting against because he has so many pocket picks that are actual counters to the matchups instead of just, like, playing these neutral matchups. So, even if Geckos is, like, better at some of, like, specific meta champions or something, when you bring him in, you're broadcasting what your strategy is, right? Unless you're then saying, oh, Geckos is also going to learn Vladimir and Yorick and Urgot and all these things and Volibear and stuff just as well as Bwipo. I don't see it as like a real benefit in the actual Fearless draft. And it's interesting because like, I was talking to Spawn as well about this, and I hadn't seen his interview with I Will Dominate, so that was my bad. Obviously, I should have looked into that. But he was basically saying like he intentionally didn't mention Fearless draft in the interview because he agrees that it's not actually an advantage to have extra players for Fearless draft. He thinks that's just like not real. But that for them it was more about seeing like is it actually a performance issue? Like, is it like an individual player performance issue that is why they're actually trying out these subs? Because you bring someone in, you say, all right, does that fix our problems? Okay, it doesn't. All right, we have to figure something else out, right? Like, it's not necessarily individual performance. Then let's look at what the other things are. And for him, it seemed like it was much more about just nailing down why are things not working well as they should be, right? Which I think that's like realistic, and that's just the reality of pro sports. Anyone's job can be lost, and like we were talking about that too. It's like he's like I could lose my job if we're not winning enough. Anyone on the team could lose their job. That's just the reality, and pretending otherwise is just kind of fake, right? Like the object of the team is to win,
right? And I think that's definitely something that people kind of debate, because I talked to Sneaky and Doublelift about this a little bit, and it's interesting because I think me and Sneaky have a really different view on that whole thing, where basically it started with the idea of everyone on a team is replaceable, which that was kind of like the TL thing, right? It was like APA said no one on this team is replaceable. Spawn said actually everyone on the team is replaceable. And it's just two really different schools of thought, which I think both can be valid. But for me, when I'm on a competitive team, I would much rather have the opinion that, nobody's replaceable. It's like we're a unit. We do well as a team. It's like all of our collective experience is what makes us good. Our trust in one another, that's what makes us good. And so from that reason, I would say, like we're not replaceable, because I would want everyone to feel comfortable, everyone to feel like secure and whatnot. And I guess the other side is that can breed complacency if you don't think you could be replaced if you slack off.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that in me and Sneaky's view, it's just, why would you do that, right? It's like we're all here to win. It's like slacking off and getting complacent is not even something on the radar. So I don't think you need to take measures to avoid that, unless, it's just like, why are you competing in the first place if you're going to do that?
I mean, I think in the ideal world, what you're saying, it makes perfect sense, right? And it's like, I love that, for that to be, the reality and stuff of like, okay, 5 players, all skilled players, all working equally hard towards the same goal, then everyone should, like, you shouldn't be worried about losing your job because you had a bad week or two, as long as you're still putting in the same amount of effort and stuff. But at least, maybe I'm just jaded because like my experiences and stuff, like when I was a pro, it's like, when I was on EG, there was so much talk about it's a family, it's more than a team, it's not a job, all this sort of stuff. And then it's like, the reality was, once WoW became less popular and they wanted to spend more money on Dota, it's not family anymore, you're cut, right? Like the team's gone. And and like, almost everyone I know who had been in esports for a long time had like varying stories of that, whether it's like the org dropping them or paying less attention to them, or, you do bad enough that the team wants something else. Cause it's like, at the end of the day, it's not even necessarily like it's not the players that are going to get to make those decisions, right? If you're on Cloud9 and, you guys are all bought in the exact same way and everyone's working at it, but you're not getting the results that Jack wants or whatever. And at the end of the day, I'm not saying Jack would do this or whatever. It's just the reality is like there's going to be a guy who can make that decision. Yeah. And if that guy isn't happy with the performance of the team, he can choose to cut whoever he wants, right? And so it's like, to me, it's like a nice mindset to have that, like, this is the team, we're locked in, no one's going to get replaced, everyone working towards the same goal. But the reality to me has always been that it's just like, it's kind of like not true, right? Because it's
right.
Someone up above can just say, nope, we're not paying Meteos his salary anymore. I think he's the problem. We're getting Canyon. And sorry, bud, you don't have a job anymore.
Or leave out your contract
or
whatever. But no, I totally get what you're saying. I think that's extremely valid. And it's kind of one of the things that has changed in League over the years, because in the early days of League, like with C9 when we came up, it was like, before, teams were very much player run, which is kind of what Near Airport is nowadays. And Los Ratones, I mean, I guess Casual runs it and he's the coach, but to me that always felt really cool. And it was like, it's just the players are the team.
5 guys in a dream.
Yeah, exactly. And that was more of the family feel, because, everyone is actually in it together, right? It's like you are all practicing together, you're competing together, win or lose together, whatnot. But it is definitely different when, the people making the decisions for who's the roster, who gets paid, whatnot, are not the people playing. So I see what you're saying there. I think that's super valid. It's just, I guess what it used to be and what I really like isn't necessarily reality nowadays. So
yeah, no, but I agree. It's like a great situation if you can have that, but it's just, no matter how much a coach or a GM or whatever believes in a roster and wants to say, that this is the roster we're going to stick with. If the person that's signing the checks doesn't want to sign the check anymore, what are you going to do?
Yep.
Also, I mean, ideally, all the players will have their own motivation.
Yeah.
But the reality is we have examples of extremely highly paid players in the past that did just kind of take the check and slack off. So there is a little bit on both sides where, there could be some reasoning, to light that fire. But yeah, I 100% agree. Like ideally it's like everyone's playing for the competition and the love of the game and they have their own motivation and their own fire. But yeah, I mean, Spawn straight up said, yeah, part of the goal of this is to check the next generation of talent. Mm-hmm. So either it does confirm the faith in their current roster or their...
One thing I wanted to add to that before I forget is that I talked to Blabber after the games on Sunday, and I sort of asked him about it because he's actually scrimmed against TL with their tryouts, and he wouldn't leak to me who they were trying out, which makes sense. It's respectful. But he did say that he didn't think any of the tryouts were better than Umpty or APA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it was kind of interesting.
That's always something that I think some can get overlooked sometimes by fans, where it's funny, like I'll have these discussions sometimes with a coach or whatever, and the community will be like, "Oh my god, like why haven't they gotten rid of Azael? This guy's a bum. He's clearly the worst mid laner in the league. Like what are they doing? He's a scrub. He loses to everyone." And then you go to the coach and you're like, "Why do you still have this Azael idiot on your team? Like this guy sucks." And they're like, "Well, we tried out 10 different mid laners. They're all worse. Like what are we supposed to do? Like he might suck, but we couldn't find anyone better, so we're stuck with him."
Yeah, who's going to replace him?
Yeah, so one thing that I think is relevant could be the timing on these things, because to me, say your team's having issues or whatever, you just had a really bad result in the season. To me, I feel like you should do this stuff like right after your season, like right going into the off season, be like, okay, we think there are some issues in the team. Let's bring in other people and try to get a better idea of like what the issues are, right? It's like sometimes what you felt was the issue might not actually be. Sometimes like strengths that you took for granted, you feel them when they're not there. So I feel like doing that when you're not immediately going to compete actually can be really beneficial. But when you're doing it like in the middle or beginning of a season, to me that seems more like, there's some fires you're trying to put out. And because the part that I think gets overlooked is the disruption of bringing in other people and splitting practice time and whatnot. Like that is a huge cost for the team.
I always saw it that way too, but one of the things that Spawn said to me that I thought was really interesting, and might be a reason why a big benefit of actually doing it in the middle, kind of like this, is when initially, I read the thing about, helps us decide if the problem is between communication or individual play. I assumed that communication was in-game communication only. But he said especially Umpty really likes watching it with God view so that he can bring up discussion topics with Impact and Core JJ on how they see the game afterwards. And so out-of-game communication for their practice can improve a lot. And like if you have very strong-willed players that see the game very clearly, like 100%, Core JJ and Impact as super veterans are very well respected, I assume really do. Like I'm imagining it could probably be couldn't be hard to communicate when they also feel like you're kind of biased because you're in the game and you see it from this perspective or whatever. So maybe using that as an extra tool for like practice and comms out of game has been beneficial to them. And he said, Umpty's actually really liked that extra tool as far as the team discussions and stuff. So I thought that was pretty cool too. He also said, Spawn was like, we are definitely not 100% there. Like this has not like fixed all our problems. He doesn't want, that to be like the takeaway or anything, but it definitely has been a process.
Not betting his teammates' life on going undefeated.
Yeah.
He's not at the Masu Busio state yet. Yeah, well, we it's definitely interesting, and we'll just see like how this works out and how this develops. Yeah. Obviously, we know for Fly they're going to be bringing in Geckos for next split, and we'll see if TL does end up actually making any changes. Also, before we move on to patch notes, the Dive League is over 1,100 members now, 1,159 last I saw. So shout out to everyone joining the league. That's really cool that that many people are actually signing up and searching it out. We're passing teams left and right, and the teams they don't even have to be searched. They just get clicked. They need to add the dive as a team as one of the options right at the top.
True. I talked to
and then we'll
Mark.
get straight to the top.
I talked to Mark in the kitchen like 10 minutes before this, and I was saying like we need to change this interface now to get some discoverability for us, and he was of the same opinion. So I don't know how quickly he can move.
There you go.
But
Fight the power. Sign up at the link.
Yeah, I also was like, I'm competitive, so I just want to see rankings of everything. Like I want to be able to see the rankings of how many people are in each team, even if I'm not like in that direct team.
Yeah, I was curious. I can't see any of them.
People have told us, oh, like FlyQuest has the most or something. I'm like, okay, how many the most, you know, and how close are we, and who's number 2 and number 3, and
I've never been a big fantasy guy, but I'm invested. I love the choosing champions every week. You know, I don't think I'm going to switch my roster once I get all of C9, but.
But it's champion.
Yeah, you know, it's fun. It's like, you know, what do I think they're going to play? It's like, oh, did this get nerfed? Did this get buffed?
Well, you should have the link to join the league if you guys want to join the Dive Fantasy League and compete in there. And who knows, maybe we can figure out some sort of like prize or something for people at the top.
That'd be cool, actually.
Maybe we can come up with some prizes. I'm looking over at our producers.
So I know
and he's guaranteeing.
So in the past,
he's guaranteeing it'll be a sweet prize.
In the past, we have tried to do like giveaways and sweepstakes and prizes.
Oh, yeah, there's all
and
kinds of
every time they have told us that there are legal issues, and they're like, "Don't say you're giving anything to anyone. We're gonna, you know, that exposes.
We're not giving anything to anyone."
And they're like, Riot has like, you know, a very big company, has like teams of lawyers and stuff, but they're like, don't, this is not worth it. And so
Kobe will personally come spend a day with you if you get first place in the Dive Fantasy League.
We've
as long as you're not cheating with the LTA South players, because they have too many points.
They're getting too many points. That's true. But we'll check in next week and see how many we're at. New patch just came out today, 15.8 or 15.08 or whatever you want to call it, with some more changes. The biggest one seems to be the kind of like I don't know if you want to call it a rework or like, you know, mini change or whatever, where they're kind of like taking power away from Tibbers.
For solo queue.
For solo queue. And I know that was, I think, intended to be kind of like power neutral, more power in the spells, less power in Tibbers. On Lolelytics, it's down 7.5% win rate, which is crazy.
That's usually not a good thing.
That's
champion.
Fat. So definitely got hit extremely, extremely hard. I'm sure that there will be, you know, buffs coming if they want to kind of continue along this route, but that was definitely a really big one.
Oh my God. I didn't actually see the numbers on this, but Tibbers
got murdered.
They might as well just keep him as a teddy bear. Like, what? His flame aura is doing like a third of the damage.
Yep. They went after Tibbers' aura.
and the
he has zero aura.
He has no aura now. Aura. Oh, no.
That is rough. Yeah, I can see why the winner, also her health growth went down, and it's like, hey, how's an extra 0.05% ratio on your Q sound for all these nerfs? Nah, I mean, she'll probably get buffed later, but I wouldn't play her for now.
Yeah.
Seems bad.
Definitely seems pretty crazy.
Yeah. I think overall this patch is going to have very little impact on pro play. A lot of the changes are either on the small side or mostly solo queue directed for, solo queue champs. I guess the one that to me stood out because it is high on my mind in both pro and solo queue as a jungler that has to deal with Gwen's being flex picked early on and playing either top or jungle.
Turbo broken.
I was actually hoping that Gwen was going to get a bigger nerf.
Me too.
This nerf to me is a bit light. I still think she'll be good. It hurts her early game, nerfing the E. I think nerfing the E damage is good. I was just, hoping they would nerf it a bit more. Because you max it second and it's still going to be the same once you max it. So it's basically just early game nerfs towards her, which is especially nice if you have to play against her in the jungle, but she's still going to be good. So still played, but not probably pick banned, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. I think the other changes to me that seem like we might affect pro play, obviously the Yone nerf, I think, is fairly relevant. I'm not. I don't think it's going to be enough to move the needle of being like, oh, all these lane matchups are different now. We're not going to pick Yone anymore. But 2% max health on his W, like that's somewhat significant.
Especially in combination with the changes from before as well.
Yeah. So I think that Yeah, it'll be a decent nerf for him, but Yone is not necessarily like a lane dominant champion, right? Like a lot of Yone's laning phase that we see is he's kind of just like sitting there at 100 HP, second win, de-shielding his way through the lane until he gets Vamp Scepter and boots at least. So I don't think it's going to change him too much, but one change to me that seemed somewhat interesting was the brand buffs, because right now we're actually not seeing that many AP junglers being played, right? It's like there's a lot of Sejuani, there's a lot of Xin Zhao, Vi, and so a lot of times it feels like it's a bit related to what's being played in solo lanes, because right now it does seem like it's a lot of AP mages and whatnot mid, but if there are 80 champs that want to go mid and you need an AP jungle option, Brand's always been pretty solid. He's getting his clear speed buffed again, which is one of the levers that can turn him from, horrible to really, really good pretty fast. So I don't know if it's going to be enough, but I'm a fan of Brand jungle. I think it's super fun. So I would like to see him get played.
I think there's also a couple champions that have gotten a few kind of touches over the last while that I feel like already maybe should have been seeing some pro play. Like Shen to me is a champion that I already thought was like pretty solid. And it did get the buffs, the Q buff damage to towers was honestly way smaller than I thought it was going to be. Like I know it was never supposed to have like the max HP thing, but just in my mind it was going to do way more. And then when I tried that, it's like the most you ever hit the tower for with like max rank Q is like 20. Right. And that's on like the first plate, right? Before it has additional armor. So it's like 20 more per auto. And a lot of times you're hitting it for like 10 more, 11 more. It's like basically nothing. Right. So that didn't really do too much. But they did reduce the cooldown on the parry zone, 2 seconds off that. And it's a last max. So it does help a little bit. And then also when you get the Q pull through, you get 5% more slow at early levels. So it's 25% slow on them. That plus pretty much all Shens now are playing approach velocity. So then it's like a pretty big difference as far as speed. So I do think those are kind of nice little buffs that for a champion that I already think kind of could be situationally played.
Because I play a lot of champions that auto attack and have empowered auto attacks.
No, you only play Volibear.
No, I play. I mainly play Volibear, but I've always played like Udyr and Xin Zhao and stuff like that too. And so the parry zone has just always screwed me. So when I saw the note, I was really scared because it's 2 seconds all the way. Yeah. So at max rank, it's also still 2 seconds, which means it's only 10 seconds, not with cooldown reduction and
level
stuff.
18.
Later in team fights and stuff. But no, early on, it being down 2 seconds is also really annoying because he saves people from stuns because Volibear's stun is very telegraphed. Xin Zhao's stun or knockup is very, very targeted also. And so I was certainly scared. But people still aren't playing Shen, so I don't see him that much in
the other angle. So there's definitely the top Shen angle, which is what we think of, but support, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't know,
jungle.
Maybe I don't know about that one, but I think support could be an option or even a flex pick, right? Like flex picks are really good in pro play. Like to me, this seems like a Team Liquid buff. I don't know if he's quite there yet, but Impact throughout his entire career, he's been a great Shen player. That pocket pick will always come out. Like Shen cannot be played the entire year, and then game 5, boom, Impact Shen, and he almost always delivers on it. So that could be big for them.
And Core JJ was a year ago or a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. He was the one who like set the record for least amount of time spent with your AD carry. It was when he was with Tactical. So however many years ago that was, he was our famous River Shen, and we had this River Shen discussion for like a month or something. It was all because Core JJ.
That's
so
funny.
If Umpty also picks it up, they could have a triple way flex.
Okay, yeah,
there you go.
That definitely could. So one of the other changes to me that stuck out is potentially big was the Overlord's Bloodmail change, because that item, it hasn't been bad, but they're actually buffing it just because it's not bought that much. Mm-hmm. And I don't really know who's going to buy it, because the reality is it's competing with so many other good bruiser items, right? It's like right now the bruiser trifecta is like Sundered Sky, Cleaver, Sterix, and you don't really see the Overlord Bloodmail.
Even Shojin feels better.
Yeah, it does. But so what I think this could do is it's a huge buff to Sion. He's been pretty much the only champion who will routinely buy this item, and Sion's kind of getting meta nowadays. He's getting played a lot, and to me, I think he's probably under the radar. I think he's going to start rising in priority a lot because even in like I don't even know what's good against him in lane. It seems like he just kind of wins every lane. Like he's being played against Gnar, he's being played against Jace, and actually winning the lane. And not even to mention how good he is in lane swaps. He's great for your comp. So this item with Sion already being good, I think we're going to see a lot of him.
Yeah, my problem with this item in general, since it at first was created, is that it is so similar to Titanic Hydra. It shares the same space. It is flat attack damage, flat health, and gives you damage with bonus health. It's basically Titanic Hydra without the auto attack reset and with the different scale.
No wave clear.
And so it is just like when they first made this item, I was like, what are you doing to differentiate this in this space where both of them fill such similar roles? I just feel like one is always going to just be better than the other one. So maybe, this one is just better now, unless you really need the auto attack reset like Xin Zhao, or you really need the AoE for the wave clear for split pushing, and you don't have another way in your kit to deal with the minion waves, which is why I think Sion is a good example that you bring up, since Sion Q already like annihilates minion waves and stuff like that. So I think he's definitely a good user. And I guess I just always had an issue with the core of the items, because as soon as I saw this change too, I was like, oh, maybe I'll build it like last item now, because I still think the Cosmic Drive early stuff on Volibear is very good, but they buffed Volibear AD ratio and stuff, and so maybe I slap it on there as like a later health scaling, type of item.
The thing that's always tough is it feels like some of these items I think work really well together on some of these champions. Like you're like, oh, well, what about this or this? You can build them together, and you can build Sterix. So you could have those 3 items that are really good, but then you have no resistances.
Yeah, you can't index so heavily into all these flat health things, because it just becomes so efficient. The more health you have, the better it is to get like a little bit
HP,
of little resistances. So
yeah, it is really funny on Mundo though. I already built it sometimes on Mundo because you can. I think Mundo, like I've been trying to sell this to some of the LCS top laners when I see them around the studio. Loki, Mundo, there's this build. You go triple giant spell, and you complete your Warmogs, and then that activates the 2k HP passive. And it's like really hard to actually deny him from farming early. This champion scales to infinity late game. All the pros I talk to don't even realize the change in the scaling on his ult and the W. So like at 16, every enemy within it's 1,200 units of you, you get an additional 5% base health. That's like the missing health. When you activate it, so that goes to your actual like flat health, and then you also get an additional 5% healing on your ult, and it's like late game level 16 ult can heal for like 7,000. It's crazy. But when you get to 1-on-1 on Warmogs, you basically cannot be pushed out of lane like at all ever again, because you're fully resourceless, and you can just take like absolute psycho trades against champions like Jace and stuff. I think it's actually like insanely good. Even like R and stuff, like I feel like it's kind of sleeper OP, and then you just go Heartsteel second. But you can do, like I've been playing a fair bit of Mundo, you can do some really funny builds where you go like Warmogs and then into Heartsteel, and then if you're just having a really good game, you can just go like Titanic and Overload's Bloodmail, and you have like 500 AD, and you're like
and like 0 armor MR.
Yeah, but then you auto E Titanic a squishy, and they actually die from full.
Yeah, that actually sounds really fun. I kind of like that because Mundo has actually been. He's been getting played jungle some too in solo.
He's a flex pick.
Well, I was also watching EU. He got played multiple times in jungle in EU.
Yeah, I think he should absolutely be getting played in pro. Like the craziest thing about it too is because he builds so much HP, and demolish damage scales with HP. So it's like once you have Warmogs, it's obviously worse than 100-0 straight up fight, but like you just take any trade and you're just like a side lane beast, and use that to scale towards the tank items, and then you can team fight later on. But it's like you push someone out of a lane, like you just take this psycho trade where you lose 60% of your health, they lose like 30% of theirs, then you do it again, and it's when you're full health, right? And they just have to base, and then it's like their tower just gets one shot because you get bonus AD from your E, so your auto attacks are hitting a lot harder. The E is also an auto attack reset that does bonus damage on the towers, and you have demolish. Like if they ever leave lane for 1 second, the tower just dies.
I think you've convinced me. I'm down for the Mundo because to me it feels like for jungle and top there's kind of some holes with champions that you want to play, right? It's like the champions are not bad, but it doesn't seem like there's anything like too crazy OP outside of some outliers. So yeah, I think Muno definitely could fit.
And you can just do like Warmog's Heartsteel into like Unending Spare or like Resistances. You don't have to go crazy full.
Well, for where it is getting played in jungle in Europe, he's rushing the Heartsteel. Skewmon keeps playing it into the Zyras, and he was like running over teams. So
the clear is giga fast in jungle too.
Already definitely viable there.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would definitely like to see it more. Singe is also kind of interesting to me because it's been getting like a lot of buffs, and I always doubt that we'll see it in pro because it is such a weird champion where it's like mostly people who play it are just like that's like all they play, But this champion's win rate has just been going up and up and up, and it's like 54% win rate champion now, and does have some really good matchups. Proxying obviously is just getting more and more popular kind of in League. I don't know if it's like the BIOS effect or like what it is, but people are kind of like learning more about proxying and like how advantageous it is, and I see people doing it in so many matchups now. But between that and now his passive is getting buffed. They already did all these changes a while ago, whereas like Q damage was getting buffed, and then the Q. You get credit if like minions are in the poison and your minions last hit them, you still get the last hit, so you can have like perfect CS the whole game. Like I don't know, this champion feels like it could get into pro, but I just don't know that it ever will because people don't play.
Well, the thing is, his buffs are immediately reverts of changes before. So let me read to you this: 25.6. The AP ratio tick reduced to 10% from 10.625. The next patch, 25.07. AP ratio tick increased to 10.625 from 10%.
But he had other buffs in there as well.
But then the exact same line in that patch, they nerfed the per target cooldown of the passive to 10 seconds from 8. And in this patch, they're now buffing it to 8 from 10. So we've had multiple patches where back to back, they just revert the exact line, or not all of them, but
he has gotten multiple buffs.
And this is a nerf too to his ultimate, the resistances, where he just got on the 0.7.
Yeah, but ever since the mini rework, I think he's gotten significantly stronger.
Yeah. I just always think it's funny.
The last couple patches is really fun.
I think it's funny when we have this ping pong.
They nerf the Q and then buff the Q and then nerf the passive, then buff the passive. That's definitely true. But I do think this champion has been getting stronger and stronger.
Impact is one of the people who plays it. These patch notes to me feel like Impact's going to be pretty happy because it's like Renekton, Shen, Singed, all champs that he's been known to play in the past. We'll see. I'm not too huge on the Singed personally, just because on top of being like a really weird play style, he also, to me in pro, always feels like his ult is kind of like a big issue with him because he needs his ult to fight, right? And sometimes you'll just ulti in a fight and then it gets disengaged, and Syndra without ult is really, really comically weak. So that has always been kind of an issue for him.
It's hard to fit him in pro. He used to be the really good Ornn counter pick, right? Because you could just W the Ornn ult every single time, and he can't charge during it.
To me, he's moving even further away from pro than I feel like he already was. Because now I'm like, this is the champion that if like I am going to play with some friends and we have someone who does not play League, I'm going to say, just lock in this Singe, because literally you can just run around in circles. Like your poison will literally guarantee you last hits. Like if you have a friend who doesn't know how to last hit, doesn't know how to play any macro or play with the team or play away from the team or anything, you slap him on Singe and you're just like, it's fine because you're playing like all the other Singe mains anyways, just doing whatever you want.
I like that you mentioned that. I like that you mentioned that because for me, when I was starting League, so nowadays, I think one of the things that I was so bad when I started League, just mechanically, I couldn't grasp my head around how to auto attack champions and move, right? It's like I would just right click on them, and if you're doing that, it's really like useless. So I would just play Mundo and Singed in a Mumu because I wouldn't have to. I would just run next to people with the Sunfire Cape. Yeah. So yeah, that's actually good. Just you have a new friend, just be like, yeah, just lock in Singed. Yeah. You don't need to do anything, just run around.
Just run around. People are chasing you. It's probably good. Run by the minions. You'll get some free money. There you go.
All right. Well, we'll see if we do get any Singed or anything crazy. It's been fun seeing some of the new picks popping up here and there, especially from Bwipo. Obviously brought out the York and everything, which did get nerfed as well. But we are going to talk about LTA now. We had week 2 of the LTA positioning phase, as it is called, happened last week.
We're positioning.
We're positioning.
Positioning for a super week coming up.
Yes, that's true. This Saturday, Sunday, and Monday will be the bonus day that is going to be coming up this week, and that's going to be the last of the best of threes last of the best of ones before we start best of threes for the split. So they're going to be, after this coming week, going to be dividing up into 2 groups, and then it's going to be into this best of 3 stage that I think most fans are pretty excited for, especially the hardcore fans definitely wanted the best of 3s back. And when we're in Fearless, of course, you want best of 3s. You want more games. It's going to be more interesting. So that should be a lot of fun. But where did you guys want to start from this last weekend's games?
Well, I think, our dive match of the week, which was 100 Thieves versus FlyQuest. That's a good one to start with.
It was a bit of a letdown for me. I was really excited for that one. I thought it was going to be an absolute banger. 100 Thieves kind of got stomped.
They did. I think that it was sort of the nature of the picks in my mind because, Callista is one of these picks where I still, to the life of me, don't know where I rate her because she's. I always used to call champions that are banned a lot and then very volatile when they show up. It's kind of like Chupacabra picks because, back when Zyra Khan was played, everyone would be terrified of dude, I can't pick Zyra Khan. They'll go Kate Morgana. And I'm like, when has Kate Morgana ever worked? And I mean, obviously it's worked since then, but this was a while ago.
Yeah.
And so to me, Callista is kind of in that category because, a lot of times when she shows up, she doesn't actually dominate games unless you're a ruler because she has this really distinct play style where it's you want to play really, really aggressive. You need to play with Renata or some other lanes. And so, they went Callista into Caitlyn, which is the game's just going to be live or die by bot lane. And it was kind of a death for 100 Thieves. They had the really aggressive trade early on, level, was it 2 or 3 all in, where I actually think FBI could have probably won that if he played it a little differently. But obviously it went bad for them. They chased down Busio, didn't get the kill, and then went for a proxy while Sejuani was right behind him. So I think the game got a little out of hand early, but it was spicy for the first few minutes.
I'm glad that you mentioned the Sejuani because I was going to bring up Inspired and Jungle. Whenever you're going into a game and you're like, oh, we're going to live or die by this bottom lane. I definitely want my junglers down there also. I think Inspired had such a good week for this team, creating so many plays, always playing to their win cons. It feels like he's super efficient in still being able to play, towards those areas that, FlyQuest, this one definitely looked to be a bit one-sided.
Yeah, I mean, they got I thought from my recollection, the 100 Thieves bot lane got a good early advantage and then pushed them in and they had them super chunked out. And then they kind of did this chase past the tower and then Inspired was there and killed them. And then he's saying, and then it's then he immediately went top and got a kill top. And then Inspired I felt decided that game because then they lane swapped up and then he did this wait in the bush top lane where he waited for I don't know. It felt 30 or 40 seconds. Maybe it wasn't actually that long, but it was quite a long time.
I think it was almost a minute.
And FBI was playing really respectful to the fact that he could be there. It felt for 2 straight waves, he just didn't interact, and he's okay, surely no one's here. And he goes forward and he's still there, and then he kills him. Yeah. And then I was all right. Well,
I think from there the game was maybe not completely over, but kind of over.
But it felt it.
Yeah, exactly. Because so I will say to River's defense, obviously, we're talking about this. It sounds like it's a bot lane focused matchup and Inspire's just ganking the bot lane. Where's River? But River actually did make the first move toward bot. He did the 3 camp and then looked bottom. Mm-hmm. But it was actually FlyQuest bottom lane was able to play around it properly, which it was kind of awkward because if FlyQuest bot lane is able to push in that timing and not die to the gank, that makes it so hard for River to really do anything, right? Because normally if you're playing Xin Zhao, he did his red side clear, goes bottom, he looks for the gank, and obviously you really want this gank to work because you don't have much else to do afterwards. And normally, if the gank doesn't work, your fallback would be, okay, I'm going to go invade his bottom side. But again, the lane was pushed in, so he doesn't have prior from his bot lane to follow up for the invade. So I think it was actually really well played by FlyQuest bottom lane. Mm-hmm. And I think you could definitely argue that 100 Thieves should have been able to kill them in the all-in. I think they misplayed a little bit. Mm-hmm. But, it's just these very, very small things that in these super volatile matchups that can just absolutely swing the game in massive ways.
And that's then why it looks like super one-sided afterwards, because then you're looking at the comp and you're like, okay, so 100 Thieves have the Callista and Ari as the two main carries, which are not great scaling carries. Like those are very explosive, early and mid game, lots of playmaking and stuff, but like very short range, and gonna have a hard time into the setup that FlyQuest have with having Yone Sejuani threat plus Nico threat, and then still having such long range with Caitlyn. So and then you're in a situation where, like you're saying, after those couple of first plays, like I don't see the way that you like retake the game from that position with that type of draft.
Yeah, well, I mean, there was also the pretty bad grub fight the 100 Thieves had a little bit afterwards, where I believe Ayla like flashed in and misclicked his W on the wrong target. Which then led
they
to
were
them
both
having,
stacked for the bailout.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where I think there are some things that are understandable if like you're trying to target someone and they're stacked, but if you're an enchanter, you just mouse over their portrait, right?
That's
It's
what I
like
was gonna say.
if you're playing a healer in WoW, it's the same thing. Like you can tell the people who like haven't played WoW before, because it's like to me, I feel like that's way easier to do.
Unironically, I think about that every time I watch people just soaking all of the Otacon abilities. I'm like, this person's never done a raid before.
Yeah, and obviously, again, it just comes back to like there are these really small things, and it's just with the team comp. 100 Thieves, they're known for playing these really like explosive team comps. To their credit, I don't think I've ever seen a boring 100 Thieves game. They are very high risk. They're very high kill, but there's two sides to that coin. Sometimes if it doesn't work out, you have these like early game comps and it doesn't go your way, then like it's gonna be a bad game.
Yeah, and they always try and fight their way out, which I super respect.
Yeah.
They're not gonna just sit down and be like, oh well, too bad. We can't go to this objective, or we're gonna get pushed in. We're just outranged. No, they're gonna go for a flash play, try and get a pick, type of thing.
For sure. I mean, I generally look at Callista, to kind of touch on your earlier point really quick, as it's like kind of like Lee Sin and stuff, where it's like if you're really good at it, it's really good, and if you're just okay at it, there's something else that you could pick that's better, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, this champion is getting banned a ton. It's like the highest presence champion in the top 4 leagues for bot lane, and maybe overall, I'd actually have to double check on that. But yet, it's like when it gets through, it's clear that the other team has a plan for it. You know what I mean? They're not just like, oopsie, we forgot about Callista. It's like it's getting played into Caitlyn and stuff, where it's like chain losing against Caitlyn. It's 1 in 5 in the top 4 regions against Caitlyn.
Varus plus Nico is also super popular.
I was gonna say like Ashe as well is generally a good answer. It's like people are playing, matchups where it's like you're outranged and you're just getting poked, and Varus isn't like that easy to just like jump on, and Ashe isn't that easy to jump on. Caitlyn's just not easy to like, you can't just like run straight at them and all in them as the Callista. So it's very, very difficult, especially because it's often range support pairings with these kind of like long range, ADs that are making things difficult. T1 played it against HLE, and it was like they tried to do, the super dominant double AD carry bot lane thing. They did like the Ashe Callista, and HLE played Renata Caitlyn, and just kind of like, you can kind of just like neutralize and outrange. So
I feel for bot laners in this meta, because Kalista is one of those champions. This reminds me of like I keep doing these super long throwbacks. You'll probably totally forgot about now, but like season 6, Nidalee jungle was kind of like this, where it's permabanned.
This was the Nidalee one-shot spears, right? Where it was like the full AP, like you just got absolutely nuked if you got hit by a single spear.
Kind of. She was just extremely dominant in the jungle because she just like was way faster than everyone and just strong. But it was to the point where Nidalee was banned in like 98% of games. But if it went through, you had to know how to play it. You had to know how to like dominate the game with it. And it's just so different from everything else in the game. And I think Callista falls in that category too, where it's like, if you're an AD carry, playing Callista is hard. You need a ton of games on Callista because, just her movement and everything, her win con, it's like you need to be really aggressive.
And Those two are hard.
Yeah, like you were saying, it's like every time you're playing her, you're also playing her in probably the worst situation for her, right? It's like you're playing into a counter. So that's really tough. If I was an AD carry, I would just be like, please ban Callista. Like, I don't want to deal with this.
I agree.
Yeah.
But 100 Thieves, that was kind of like the big kind of close matchup for the week that, we were really looking forward to. Definitely a lot of credit, I think, deserved by FlyQuest. They are our lone undefeated team right now, sitting 4-0 at the top of the table. Also worth noting, another good matchup that I think on paper you wouldn't have expected to be as exciting coming into the season, but the TL Lyon one, because Lyon had beat all the bottom teams. They were 3-0 of that like top 4 bottom 4 that everyone's talked about so many times. This was like, okay, can Lyon kind of punch up above their weight class and take down a team? We know that they ended up losing, and top 4 is now actually 8-0 versus the bottom 4 teams. So no one has actually dropped a game yet against those bottom 4 teams. We'll see if that changes, obviously, throughout this super week. But Lyon I actually thought was in quite a good spot against TL. And I kind of just felt like they fell into this trap that sometimes teams do. And it was interesting because they discussed it on pros too. So I can maybe kind of get your guys' thought on it. But like, I felt like once Saint got this advantage on Rise, like no one could actually answer him in that game on TL. Like TL had no good answer. And they even had Bard as well. Like they had Rise Bard. It felt like they had full side lane prio. And they did this thing that I kind of associate with like lower ranked teams where they like kind of got nervous and just started grouping. And then it's like they didn't really end up utilizing their side lane advantage on Rise at all. And then eventually, TL gets picked, TL wins a fight, TL wins a game, whatever. But I do think this is a problem we've seen with Rise a number of times. And on pros, Emily was talking with, it was all the former EG guys, it was Impact, Vulcan, and Inspired. And they were kind of talking about like top 4, bottom 4, and this idea that sometimes if things aren't working in scrims, you like always think the bad thing is going to happen, right? So it's like, oh, I can win in 1v1, but if I go win 1v1 in the side lane, my whole team's going to die. So like I better group up. And then you're dropping waves, and then you're not actually like getting an advantage. You're not taking kind of the path to victory that you should. So the other team just like slowly wins because they are playing side lanes and stuff, and kind of seeing that difference between top 4, bottom 4.
Yeah, definitely. I think that for this specific game, Lyon versus TL, I was very, very impressed with Saint and Audi this game because I remember it started, I think TL was sort of, making moves. I think they got like the first set of grubs. And then I remember Inspired was on the cast for this game. And it was really cool to listen to him because to me, he's just like one of the smartest people in the region as far as, just how the game's going to go. And he mentioned how Lyon, kind of caught TL super off guard because TL assumed that Lyon was going to contest the second grubs, but they didn't. And they just went for this bottom dive, and it was so successful. It was kind of like a blow open the game dive. It was 3-for-0 where they moved down with Rise. And yeah, to me, that was just a super good play because it wasn't a standard play, right? A lot of times, to me, bottom tier teams deviate from the standard in like a bad way where they just kind of like make mistakes where they shouldn't. But this one, it caught TL super off guard, and it was executed really well. So I thought that was really cool from Lyon. What I didn't really like from Lyon was the Aurora pick. I think that was about the most useless I've ever seen a top lane pick be all season.
Licorice had a rough game too, individually.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's part of it, right? It's like he didn't get a kill or assist the entire game. And I've heard that in LPL, people do this matchup like Aurora into Rumble because Rumble's a strong laner. Aurora can kind of go even with them. But I'm not a huge believer in this champion. I think that, to me, it's like she doesn't just fit into any comp. I think you have to be very proficient at her because like, you can just literally miss every ability, which we kind of saw there was a top lane situation where Licorice could have killed APA, but he sort of like, whiffed everything. And you also have to just, like be ahead, find good flanks, like find good ultis. And so I didn't really like the Aurora pick. I think that if they had, maybe some frontliner, this could have felt better because to your point, Azael, I think that another reason you see this kind of grouping thing is because you feel like you don't have vision and you can't get vision. And, you're up against Alistair and then Neferi as well is a really good... like
Group 5 and walk in to get vision.
Exactly. But also from Lyon's point of view, it's really hard to play split. It's like you've got a Talia ult, you've got Neferi ult, you've got Alistair, which is a horrifying champion to face check, especially if he's just like flashing or hex flashing out of bushes at you. And so I think for Lyon, it could have also just been like, they don't feel safe doing anything on their own. So like, okay, let's just group for vision. And then, oops, we're grouped now. And it's hard to ever get into a situation where we're not grouped. So, yeah, pretty tough, I would say.
Yeah, I think the Bard has to play really well in this game because the Bard can be the one that's zooming around and getting into spots where he can get vision and is going to be the one that is going to be putting extra pressure on the side laners to allow your Ryze and your Aurora to move up. Because if the Bard is really good at controlling vision, and you can't really do this yourself, it's a team, always a team effort in getting vision, jungle and support usually. But if the Bard does play it really well and you get the extra vision, and then the Bard gets to like go through Fog of War and put pressure on the side lanes and throw Bard ultimates to constantly burn flashes, then it can definitely look different. But I 100% agree with you, especially when Licorice missed got behind early. Aurora, since it's a burst damage champion, if you get behind, then what are you going to do? Especially if you miss spells. Yeah, that's not ideal. But even if you get behind and you don't have like full 100 to 0, kill threat, if you don't have lethal as a burst champion, then you just end up not doing anything really. So,
yep. I do think
it's actually really hard to team fight on well too.
Oh, dude, I think she's very hard to play, and
Her
also
laning I think is pretty easy, but the team fight is actually I think really hard.
Yeah, definitely. And I think her tuning wise, like it's very rare to actually have that lethal damage. I think more often than not, you have to just be a nuisance, be a huge threat, and like combo with other people to get kills. But what I want to touch on real quick at this game was Yone, because he's just been such a beast. I think in all of TL's games, win or loss, he's just been such a powerhouse. And this game was like one of the most fed Kaisas I've ever seen. He was like 100% crit Kaisa, like I think pre 30 minutes or something.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was just absolutely running over everybody. So he's been playing awesome. Another good one for him.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, he's definitely been smurfing. Go ahead.
Well, I just thought an interesting one to look at if you wanted to jump to the Shopify one, because since we had this really interesting discussion where you guys are talking about the lower 4 teams and sometimes it being over grouping and thinking about like the worst thing is going to happen or not going to side lanes. In this case, with the Shopify one, and this is the Shopify versus FlyQuest one, when they're playing, versus top 4 is where you really see these issues. It was just so apparent because Contracts went topside to try and get this dive, but then FlyQuest deal with the minion wave first. And so then he walks away a little bit and then they walk back. And so then you're 30 seconds delayed on your play to a side lane. And that extra 30 seconds allows for the reinforcements to get there from FlyQuest. So then FlyQuest end up getting, counter kills that Bwipo, Scion ults through, and it ends up not being a successful dive. They invested the extra time for the 30 seconds. And then you're like, oh, well, we only kind of went kills for kills on that, and we invested all this extra time and these extra resources there. And then you see it another time later in the game when they invest everybody to the bottom side, and it's kind of like the opposite situation where they're sending everyone to side lanes. And then so you're like, oh man, well, you guys just told us that we're grouping too much and we're playing all, not to the side lanes. And then we're like, oh, well, you guys are playing way too much to the side lanes because you are grouping too much and you're sending all people just to one side lane and you're taking too long. So it's not like a one rule kind of fits all these situations, but it's like you're not being as efficient with your time and your placement, because some of the plays could have worked off, but it always felt like they overcommitted to it. And it's like after the first attempt on the side didn't work, then they were like, well, we're already here. So then they did a second play, which happened both on the top side and the bottom side. And then you're like, oh, the Misfortune struts over and they punish us. Oh, the Scion ult comes through and they punish us. FlyQuest really utilized the mobility of Scion ultimate and Misfortune strut to counter some of these, what do we want to call it? Over-invested plays, or you end up spending so much extra time and overcommitting that not only do they defend the play, but you also lost resources on the other side of the map where you didn't have people. And so FlyQuest are win-win situation where they've invested, so they're growing a bunch of extra money for free on the other lane, and then they defend the play.
Inspired was talking on pros about kind of this concept too, which I thought was interesting. He was basically saying that if you watch LCK, the top laners are only going top lane. They're catching every single CS over and over and over. The junglers are perma full clearing on every single like camp respawn. Like they're only there when it's a really important moment or it's for an important objective. The top laners are only dropping waves if it's like a really key moment and like they must be there or the game is just like screwed, right?
Yep.
You know, and basically just such a focus on like high CS and getting all the guaranteed resources off the map constantly and like only grouping at the right time when it's the time and then like executing on your play and then back to catching waves and increasing your gold lead, right?
Yep.
And you know, he was saying like that's just like the correct way to play the game, or at least how he sees the correct way to play the game. And the idea that you know, lower ranked teams and like teams that are struggling are going to be more like, okay, my top laner dies a lot, so I'm the jungler, so like I gotta hover him, I gotta drop these camps and gotta be there. Like the top laner's, you know, playing a split pushy type champion, but it's like I get this play in this wave, but what if they get caught? I should just go now, you know? And it's like that idea, and they're putting themselves in these situations where you are just losing out and losing out and losing out because you're not taking the guaranteed wins of these resources that are just like free for you on the map.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's 100% something that happens on lower tier teams because I had a really similar experience when I first joined Optic. You know, not trying to flame or anything, but we went through this series.
Optic wasn't winning all the championships.
They were not.
They were a lower rated team.
They were not a high rated team. You know, when we made playoffs, that was like a huge win.
That was a
for
dub.
us. But when I first joined, you know, we had this issue where like every single game, our bot lane would be like 50 CS to 100 and losing the turret like really early. And during review, our bot lane would keep saying, we're not going to have jungle pressure. And so for me, I'm like, they're not either. Like they're just kind of winning 2v2. And then it made it feel like, you know, oh, I should be pathing more to bot side to cover their weakness. And the reality is it's like, you got to kind of just play better, right? It's like you're just getting skill checked. But it kind of comes across as like toxic if you say that.
Yeah.
So you try to make compromises. You try to like, be like, okay, you know, I'll skip some camps and go to our bot side, and now all of a sudden it's like their disadvantage is also my disadvantage.
You're losing now too.
Yeah, and then it's like it can kind of compound. So I like what Inspired said. I think that's always been a hallmark of a great team is being able to understand, you know, have everyone get resources because there were some really cool moments from this Shopify game where the one you were talking about, like where they were threatening the dive top is, to me, when I was watching that, I was like, okay, I feel like 9 out of 10 teams are calling Inspired because he's on Sejuani. Come defend us top. We're getting threatened on a dive. But Inspired just went and started clearing bot side, like pathing up. And then Bwipo had a really big advantage in his top lane matchup, and he was actually bot at the time. But he proxied a wave, and then he recalled, and then he was the one to defend this. And it's like understanding all the moving parts. It's like, yes, Inspired could be there to counter this dive, but what if they don't do it? Now all of a sudden you're just having a jungler starve himself for fun. Whereas if you just know all the moving parts, you have your Scion be the one because he has spare time, it ended up being like an insanely good play for them.
Yeah, it's all about efficiency. You know, when like you're saying, when Bwipo has another tool, this moving part of the Scion ult, being able to, you know, travel that distance way quicker, it's so much more efficient for your top laner to proxy the wave, recall, and then use this big travel tool than it would be efficient for your jungler to lose out on a bunch of stuff to go cover a play. And it's like efficiency with time and gold income is so critical to the early game of League of Legends.
Yeah.
It's also one of the really powerful things about proxying. And I think, you know, when I've talked to players and see people talk about it online, I think some of the things that they're not necessarily realizing is that it's like, proxying is not just about like getting like more uncontested gold. It's about removing your opponent's ability to actually like answer your moves, right? Because if you proxy this wave, they now have no wave to actually work with and punish your tower. So it's like you go behind the tower, you kill this wave really fast, now you recall. They have to wait for not that wave, but now the wave after it, and then that has to get all the way to your tower before they can even be like punishing this move at all. Yeah. So it actually buys you so much time to be on the map and doing things.
Exactly. It's the extra time that you get because you're doing it earlier, so you're like one step ahead. That's what people mean when they say tempo all the time, and this term always gets used, but it's like the earlier player, the extra time you have.
Yeah, exactly. So one other thing I wanted to touch on in this game that so this game, it actually, even though like if you look at the scoreboard, it looks like FlyQuest was pretty much dominating the whole game. But it was actually looking really scary for them. I think that their team comp was not the most solid. It was a 2-threat comp with MF being one of them. And like Masu had a great game, but he could have, it could have went bad for them. Like,
but it's MF.
Yeah, MF, I don't think is a very great champion right now.
I hate MF.
I think, to me, she's always been the, like, give your weak side player this champion, and, like, if you have a bunch of threats elsewhere, they will just forget about her ult and get one shot at some point. But when it's like she's one of the main threats, you're never really going to get good ultis off, and it's going to be a tough one to play. Liked his build, but what I wanted to point out was Fudge this game, actually, because going into the game, Fudge has only played Ambessa so far and had some pretty bad games, right? Like I think the match before this one, he was like 0-6, like one of the roughest Ambessa games ever. So this game he was on Gnar, and Bwipo in some of the pregame features was saying like, he had a funny quote where he said like, my coach has like a tier list of the bottom 3 players, and Bwipo's on it. And I'm like,
I think it was from pros, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, a tier list of the bottom 3 players.
The worst 3 players in the league, and Fudge was on it. And he's like, I don't know if it's just because it's what I'm doing to him in scrims or what, but yeah.
Yeah. And so Fudge actually, I think he had a much better game than he has been. And he was actually popping off in the mid game, but there was just that one moment where
the Talia wall, are we about that one?
I'm not sure. I don't think it was that one. It was the one where Shopify managed to win a fight. Like they just insta-killed Azir somehow. I don't really know what happened to him. And then they were kind of near Baron, and Bwipo was still alive. But then I think Fudge actually got emotional. I think he got a little bit too hyped because, if you've been getting blasted so much, you're up against a guy who's flaming you. And then Fudge like flashed in on Bwipo.
Yeah.
And then
by Otacon, right?
Yeah, by Otacon.
Yeah, I remember this.
So he flashed in on Bwipo, died. And it was kind of like a messy thing, but I think they could have got a lot more if he didn't do that.
Yeah.
I think they
could have done Otacon and Baron or whatever.
Yeah.
So Bwipo, his W came back up. He W'd when he walled or crushed in or whatever it is, the E, and then like auto Titanicked him, and he died when he had him killed.
Exactly. And then that kind of started this like really, really rough chain reaction for them where Fudge went bottom after that, but because he didn't have flash, he didn't feel safe. They start collapsing on him. He TPs away from bottom defensively, and then they make the classic like, they're bottom. I just TP'd up here. Let's just hit Baron, and the rest was kind of history. It's like you're getting desperate in an even game state, which is never good. And everything kind of fell apart. But Fudge was having a great game before that. He was like the richest guy in the game. He was kind of popping off on Gnar, having some good fights. But I think just, got a little bit emotional from the looks of it.
I was going to bring up the play that was up by Baron. And Shopify actually had a good position because they were going to be able to go out the top. And Sion starts ulting. And then you hear the thing for the Talia wall coming through. But then Palafox rides the wall.
Jumped off on the wrong side.
And, I mean, you don't have to ride it at all.
Hooked.
You don't have to ride Talia wall, though. You can just make it.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought they were going to do. And it was going to block the Sion ult, and everything was going to be chill. But then when I saw him on it, I was like, oh, shoot. And he just...
I thought he would just jump off early on the other side, but like he like just kept riding that thing.
And then I remember. I'm pretty sure he got hooked off of his wall, which I mean, it was super avoidable. Like, jump off earlier on the other side. Yeah. Rough one for Palafox, unfortunately.
That was a rough one. If we, that was a pretty close game. If we want to talk about a not close game, Cloud9 played Disguised, and I felt like Disguised kind of really regressed this week, which was pretty disappointing. Like I was obviously thought they were like the clear worst team. I thought they were going to be hard 8th, but week 1 they had a competitive game against FlyQuest. There were some glimmers of hope, and I was like, okay, maybe you can put up some better results. The game against Cloud9 was one of the most do nothing and lose games I have watched in so many years. Like it literally reminded me of like Ultra Depresso, like Echo Fox when they were at their worst, or like some of the like the horrible Immortals years and stuff, where like the team just look lifeless. They didn't try anything. They literally just give everything, like sit at their towers and wait to lose. And so that one for me was really, really rough. And I think Scary Jerry had a better week 1 compared to Split 1, where he was getting a ton of criticism. Still obviously made mistakes and stuff, but like also week 2 was really rough. He's just getting picked off left, right, and center.
Oh,
The MF game where he just like
Yeah.
walked in and face checked his brush. He
Oh, that-
could have even just like he didn't need to ward it, and his team was all walking the other way.
Oh, that
he
one
could have
was
just
rough.
warded over the wall if he really wanted to ward it. But like, why would you go by yourself when you have no vision of anyone and he dies there? I don't know. Like this guy's just getting picked off everywhere, and it's just so tough. Like he just doesn't seem to have a good grasp of where the enemies could be, or doesn't pay any respect to it. And you're 80 as an 80 carry, you just cannot have random deaths, or your team will not do well. It's just the reality. Like that's where most of the team's damage comes from. You are so important. If you die before an objective or a team fight, it is automatically lost, and it just seems like he is just always dead.
Yeah, it was a super rough game for Disguise. I agree. I think if I'm Disguise, I'm like, are we even going to win a game this season? Because their games have looked super, super
I don't think
bad.
they are.
I mean,
At least not in this
It's
first round robin. I would be surprised if they won anything.
yeah, true. I guess there is the best of 3s afterwards, but they need to find some way to like reset, like get on the same page, find like something they can have to work with. Because like you said, I think that mistake from Scary Jerry was, it's one thing to get caught, but in that situation, it's like that was just one of the biggest catastrophes I've seen that involved from like a single misplay, right? It's like your team's getting vision, and from C9's perspective, like they're just getting like shocked. Probably they're sitting there saying, okay, they're taking vision. I'm just sitting in the line brush, and hey, their 80 carry just face checked me and blew both sums and died. All right, I guess we just win. It's just such an unforced error. Definitely, he's a rookie. I don't want to pile on him too hard, but it's just, you cannot be doing that in pro play. And that's just, it was rough.
It's funny because we got a comms listen in, so we got to hear what Cloud9 were saying. And Blabber just walks in the brush and he's like, if I see anyone, I'm going. Like, I want to fight. If I see anyone. And then he sees the 80 carry walk up. He must have been like, oh, Christmas. So, yeah, that one was definitely a stomp. I mean, it's getting to the point where I'm like, so these guys are like underdogs of the league, and that's their brand. But it's almost like you feel bad going into them because you're like, oh, I feel like, they're about to get like just destroyed. And so you're kind of like waiting every game you go into with anticipation. So when we had that FlyQuest one, like you're talking about in week 1, that's why I got so happy. So I was, oh my goodness, saw some life from them. They got an ace. They got, they got some offensive plays. So as far as will they win a single game this split, I am still very much hopeful because they look they did look very different.
I think they'll win a game
in that
in the best
game.
of threes, probably.
And this split is also way longer. So there's also going to be way more chances for them to do
Hopefully, because
But, yeah.
right now they're very much in that like, the beginning of an underdog story where you are absolutely getting beat to a pulp mercilessly. They're super, super underdogs. So I mean,
And it's
Nowhere
really
to go
tough
but
on
up.
your mental, man. Like it's really tough when you're already an underdog and then you're just getting pounded.
So I want to say underdog stories are the best, but only when the unexpected happens and the underdog wins. Nobody talks about the underdog stories where the underdogs just remain underdogs and they just get their asses beat over and over, right? The underdog movies that happen are all about like, oh man, we're getting our asses beat
overcame
all the
the
time.
that would be a
And then
depressing
they-
movie.
surprise everyone and they win. We have never made a movie that was like, oh man, it's so hard for the Bad News Bears. They're losing all their games. And they continue to lose every game and
They
get there.
all lost their jobs.
It's like, oh shoot, it just feels so sad for them.
Well, and the other thing is, if I'm undisguised, and I don't know what the org's thinking and stuff, but they're in the guest slot, right? So they have to play promo relegation, after split 3, regardless of where their spot is. And a lot of the teams in NACL are looking a lot better than DSG is, I think.
Oh yeah,
like
I think they get cleared by near airport right now. Like Double Lift's team, I think they would get smoked really badly.
I think so too. Near Airport has gotten a lot better. I feel like they've gotten a lot better. I've been watching their games. Shout out to them. They're also the way that they're doing the edits on YouTube. I think you said Los Ratones is doing this too, but like I've loved watching some of their games. It's like it's full game, but it swaps around from all the different POVs, and like the audio track is from like everyone the whole way through. But it's like, you know, if TF Blade starts fighting, it swaps to his POV and then swaps down to bot and whatever. So you're kind of just like watching first person, but it's a really cool way to watch the game because you're watching first person the whole time, but like swapping around based on where the action is. So it's a lot of fun. But yeah, I think near airport you would expect to beat them. Like Dark Zero probably expect to beat them. Like Luminosity, probably, like there's a couple teams that I think right now you're like they'd probably all beat your ass. So you know the question then comes, if Split 2 goes real bad for them and it doesn't turn around at all, there's like no kind of light at the end of the tunnel. How are they going to all get replaced? Are they going to like, what is DSG going to try to do to try to keep their spot? Because they're going to have to fight for it after Split 3. So that's
Find
still a
some
long.
mercenaries maybe. I
Yeah,
don't know.
I mean it's still a long ways away, but that is something that's going to be in the back of their minds.
I just want to say I am glad that we do have the return of that to look forward to, though. You know, elimination, promotion, elimination, relegation stuff to me always did bring excitement to these stories that for most of the year you're like, oh no, I just keep feeling worse and worse and I feel so sorry. It allows you to feel a lot more excitement when you go into a match like that. So even though it's like scary, it actually like it builds a lot of there's a lot of hype for that. Like I'm I'm already anticipating being so much more excited and looking forward
You're
to
anticipating the anticipation.
that series than you know, the way that some of these are going. But it's still very early in Split 2.
Yeah. And also I got to give credit to Cloud9, obviously the other side of it. I thought Blabber and Loki played really well together in both their games, which was nice to see. They were combining for some really cool plays. You know, early on there was like the Loki steals Abadaga's Azir ult, and then he shuffles him back, and then Blabber is playing Poppy and he like flash stuns immediately with that. And then they did the kind of similar combo where on Castle where they steal the Meganar ult. And
That one on
scoop
Castle
into the
was
wall.
crazy. That
Yeah.
I don't think most people would have even attempted that.
I agree.
It's like Castle had Merc Treads at the time. It was a Gnar ult that didn't wall stun into a Silas E into a flash Poppy stun. It's
Yeah.
like, and Castle had flash this entire time, and he was about to go mega.
Perfect
So it
CC
was
chain.
like, if you leave one gap or you misjudge your damage by a tiny bit, this play is horrible because he's right in front of his turret with Meganar.
Yep.
So definitely massive game by Cloud9. I mean, they had good games this week. Granted, they were against Dig
Weaker
and
teams, yeah.
Disguised, but I mean, I love seeing them win. Blabber actually pulled out the Poppy jungle, which, you know, got some buffs a little while back, and he played it in a pretty unique way where a lot of times when we see Poppy, we see the full tank, we see the kind of like low econ, but he just went like Sundered Sky. He had, you know, pretty much the same farm as all the carries on his team for most of the game. He was just playing very efficiently, and he was just owning.
Have you seen the Umbral Glaive rush?
I've been playing it. I was about to say I went like this route, even went one step further, is rushing Umbral Glaive just because it's so OP now since they reduced the cost and buffed up the AD. There's like, yeah, you can go full tank, or you can do the bruiser, like start with Sundered Sky, or you can start with Umbral Glaive. And Perry is doing the Umbral Glaive into Iceborne, so I started trying that one. You can do you know, whatever you want after it. Usually it's going to be more tank after, but you can do Sundered Sky and then tank after that as well. But it is just so fun for solo queue. I highly recommend Hail of Blades, Umbral Glaive Rush. You don't go the phase rush because like it's insane burst damage. If you ever get a wall stun on someone, they're freaking dead.
Yeah.
And it is so fun to just go, you know, flash at people. Level 3 Poppy also, like the buffs that you're mentioning a while ago, it's so easy to clear camps because the Q is like all of it. So you can just like the AoE camps instantly just like evaporate and you can start walking away. You don't have to use autos and stuff because you're just going to lay a Q down as you're walking away, blows up all the raptors or whatever. Highly recommend, having a lot of fun with it right now. Even not using Poppy as a counter pick into dashes, which is the primary role for like, you know, for pro play and stuff as well. So Yeah, I definitely when Blabber locked that in, I was like, oh, is he gonna go really spicy? But he went the pro player, middle ground, go Sundered Sky, which is also still better than full tank. Definitely like that.
I think last team we haven't touched on is Dignitas, who had a really tough week. Again, they played Cloud9 and TL, so very tough teams.
Yeah, and the Cloud9 game, that was the Sven 13-0 Kaisa game, I believe, where he ended up, with death cap and stuff. And we had seen earlier the full AD Kaisa, crit Kaisa, and then we're here when we get this the AP with the on hit and the crazy poke, and Sven completely annihilating them. And yeah, Dignitas had a very rough week.
Yeah, their game against TL is, I think the one against C9 was just kind of a beating.
Mm-hmm.
And the TL one was too, but that one was a little strange to me.
They started coming back in that one because TL kind of started trolling a little bit, right?
Yeah, they did, but just from draft, I think draft in this Dig game was actually a mess because, you're giving Varus, which has been one of the best champions in the game, not just bot lane, but you're giving Varus and you're picking TP Sivir with Alistair into Varus Karma. How are you playing this lane? You aren't. They just got completely destroyed in lane, and it just felt like Dig couldn't play the game at all after this. It was just so much bleeding from that one matchup. And then the other one that really shocked me was, TL was in a point where they really needed an AP mid, right? And so in the ban phase for Dig phase 2, I think they banned Azir, which was really good. And then I'm thinking, they're going to ban Ziggs, right? It's you need to ban Ziggs here, and they banned Poppy, and then APA just takes Ziggs. And so, what was the point of banning anything this game if you're going to give APA Ziggs? That's his guy. So, just kind of sad.
Yeah, it's a crazy world where we've come to the point where the one ban against APA was Azir, which was always his worst champion, even though he just had his best Azir game last week. They leave the Ziggs open. I was also kind of...
Yeah. This game was weird, though, from TL because, they were up almost 3K at 15 minutes. It was, 2,700 gold lead at 15 minutes. And then they actually, I remember, they got that huge advantage, and I was at home and I was making some food, and so I started making some food, and I looked back and I was like, wait, why are TL losing now? They went down. They weren't down ever massively, but it looked like, okay, this is a 25-minute mega stomp, giga lead, and then you look over and Dig was up almost 1K.
It's because they gave over a bunch of free kills. They literally did the 1-by-1 thing where they were so far ahead, and I don't even remember who was the first domino in this conga line of giving over kills, but it was
I think it was Core. He got
so
caught
I think
mega deep.
I remember that one. I think there was someone before him.
Okay.
I remember it was Impact or
Impact didn't die.
Okay, well, it definitely wasn't Impact. But APA got picked off one time. I don't think it was hit. I think they sent a bunch of people from Dignitas, and it was a good Dignitas pick. But yeah, then they end up in a situation where one person dies here, and then they lose a little bit of map pressure. But then Core JJ wanted to go stop a bunch of backs after a successful dig play, and it ends up, and we're like, oh man, look at him, he's being so annoying. He's stopping the back, and then he follows them into their jungle, and it's oh, he stopped them again. They're gonna get an objective for free off of him stopping recalls. And I was like, wait a second, he is at their wolves. And they are down a person already, and there's 4 Dignitas people behind him. And so then they pick off him, and then Dignitas actually end up getting the objective. And Shaden was like, okay, you interrupted my recall 3 times. And then Shaden's like, fine, I just don't recall now. You're dead. And I get, the objective on top side. And then we were casting it. We're like, whoa, okay. We're back into this game now. But TL, after giving over, it must have been 4, I felt different individual kills that were a similar kind of way where someone was getting picked off like that, partially sometimes by their own fault, by positioning or whatever. And then they're like, okay, Impact Sion ulted in with Umpty right behind him, and they just get this clobber combo of Sion ult knocks 2 people, Umpty ults them backwards. You're just okay, never mind. That they still win
every dragon the whole game, and then you're okay, are they gonna lose? Are they gonna lose? And then they get Mountain Soul with Sion, Skarner, Giga Frontline, But
it literally felt like one of those games where they were so ahead that you lose focus. But
Yeah.
you can't do that as like a pro team, right? You have to.
Yeah, I
have to
mean,
lock
little
in.
troll.
I think I would have a hard time focusing if the enemy team picks Sivir as well. Like, I don't know the last time Sivir was viable. She has periodically shown up and never looked remotely decent. So I'm not really sure what's going on there.
I just don't even like with Sivir, the range is just so low. It feels so hard for you to ever do anything. Like,
Yeah. I mean,
it's like even when Sivir gets late game, it's so easy for you to just get like one auto by like or like hit by just one spell from something that's outside of your attack range, and then it's like, okay, how do I auto attack anymore? And the answer is often you don't. Yeah, exactly.
That's the neat part. You don't.
So yeah, I don't know. Sivir seems hard to convert any advantages on, and I agreed. When I saw that 2v2, I'm like, how in God's name do you ever play this?
You're supposed to just scrape up quarters off the sidewalk. You're trying to pick one minion here, get a little bit gold here, but you lose so much.
Level 1 Alistar versus level 1 Karma is like the largest mismatch of all time, and then you're also playing into an AD that's super strong lady phase and also outranges you, and you have no combat sum. I mean, I think the TP was probably like, we can't interact at all. I'm gonna get poked down, so instead of taking heal or whatever, I'll just like accept that we're going to be losing 2v2, and just like when I get low, I'll just TP back and keep playing for farm. But so I kind of like understood that thought process, but it is really hard when you're saying we're going to play against TL and our game plan is to pick the worst possible 2v2 matchup into what is the strongest part of their team.
Yeah.
So I will say, like, it's getting picked into Varus a decent amount, and it got played a couple times.
Alistar into Karma makes that very different to me.
Just
too.
saying, played us a couple times in LEC too.
With
The idea is to
support
try and
matchup.
focus on farm.
Yeah, I think it's also, it makes Varus not play the poke build, which is pretty much overwhelmingly what we've been seeing Varus do lately is like the lethality poke stuff. But, you just go on hit Varus and all of a sudden Sivir is completely homeless. So I don't think it's a good pick. Maybe some people disagree, but it does not look very good to me.
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting. We are coming up again on Super Week this coming week. There's a lot of matchups that should be pretty exciting because we have 3 straight days. Again, it is Saturday, Sunday as usual. Then we're also going to be on Monday. Kobe, you were saying that Cloud9 in particular had some really good ones, right?
Yeah, I think this week is a test for Meteos' fantasy strategy. Because Cloud9 to the earlier look, I feel like the Super Week, I think they had TL and 100 Thieves as 2 of their opponents, and I believe Lyon was the 3rd.
Saturday,
So,
we have really good matchups. We have Fly Lyon, which I think is going to be exciting. Then we also have C9 TL right after that.
Yeah, exactly. So they have the TL one, and then they have FlyQuest.
C9 Fly on
and then
Sunday.
I think the last one is Lyon. Scroll down.
And then Lion C9.
Yeah. So that one to me, like if you put all 3 together, felt like
That's banger.
the strongest like strength of schedule.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
this will test your faith, Meteos.
I got it.
Players.
I got my plan for fantasy. I'm selling Lyon and I'm buying Ayla, which is similar cost, but Ayla's got Dig, Lyon, and Shopify this week. So surely his price goes
That's
up.
value.
And I'm getting Vulcan.
Yeah.
Getting Vulcan
I'm
next
getting
week.
Vulcan.
Also, DSG is playing Dig, so we got the basement brawl. Somebody's going to get a win. Dig did get a series win against DSG in Split 1 because they actually beat them in the best of 3. DSG has yet to... Like, they did get a game win against Dig, but it was in the best of 3, so they never have had that, like, celebration moment where you, like, won on stage and get interviewed and can do the bow. They haven't had that yet, so we'll see if they can get a dub here before they head on into the best of 3s. It should be a lot of fun, and this is going to decide, who is going to be in which of the groups for the best of 3 stage, which should be pretty exciting. I'm definitely looking forward to it, but that is going to wrap it up for us here on The Dive, driven by Kia. Thanks again for everyone who's signed up to play LTA Fantasy. It is ltafantasy.com. If you want to join, we're going to have the link to the Dive group or league, I guess it's called, in the description below, so you can click on that and join up. Make sure you follow us on YouTube so you do not miss an episode of The Dive. You can hit subscribe to get those alerts. You can also check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. LTA returns this Saturday, April 19th, 1 p.m. Pacific. It is Fly versus Lyon, and then we've got C9 versus TL, a couple banger matchups to kick off week 3.